it might undermine the entire Bitcoin economy.
Can quantum computers steal my Bitcoin or other crypto?
Let me tell you something that might sound a bit scary.
Should I move my crypto to a new quantum safe wallet now?
Computed that a very naive attacker with 1% of the hash power can double spend on Kaspa within minutes.
Supported by IGRA Labs Atomic Programmability on a Kaspa blog tag. Cascade. Use your Kaspa without selling it.
Hi, welcome to XXIM Podcast, your home of decentralization. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Shai. How are you, Shai? Good to see you after a long time.
I'm great. I needed some peace and quiet, and I've been doing just great. It's been a really nice time in my life. We moved into a new apartment.
Beautiful.
We got to take a breather from life, and just kicking it back a little bit while trying to figure out what I do next. I'm a bit overwhelmed with the options. And I already told you the one direction I'm trying to go, but I'm keeping it to myself.
Yes. It's up to you to decide. You did tell me before the show, but I'll let you decide if you want to tell everyone. But if not, we'll keep it secret.
I'll wait for now.
Okay.
I'm working on something that is a very, very different direction. Has nothing to do with crypto, but maybe some people will find it interesting, hopefully.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will find it interesting, especially the times they're in. But that's great. That's great. I think last time I saw you, it was just after your wedding, I believe. It was August last year. Something like that, right?
I think we met once more after that.
Oh, right. September. Yes. September, maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Look, so, when we connected last time, we did a session on quantum threats. That was, I think, August, September last year. It was more on the quantum computing 101, right? Where you help us understand qubits, superposition, how quantum computers differ from classical ones. And we also went over sort of broader things like how quantum computers excel at specific tasks like Shor's algorithm, lots of things we discussed on last session, right? And if anyone is interested in learning about the science behind quantum computers, which you really helped us understand, I'll put up a link somewhere here, right? Here or here, right? But today's session will be different, right? Today we'll focus on simplifying these complicated concepts. People have been looking for answers, and I don't think they've got the answers. So I was hoping to get on the show to get these, to simplify these questions and perhaps answer some of those questions, right? So I've put together 15 of the frequently searched questions around the quantum computing and mostly quantum plus crypto, right? So the topic is quantum plus crypto, right? And so we're going to discuss that. But I do have one rule for this session, for one sort of rule I put together, which is each question you'll have 1.5 minutes to So I've got a timer.
I don't know if you know this about me, but some people have said that my answers tend to be on the long side.
Well, that's why I have this 1.5 minutes, because I want it to be precise and and pointy answers. But it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
Awesome. Let's speedrun quantum crypto.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're happy with the rules, we can get started.
Let's do it.
Sweet, easy. Let's do a quick intro. So, for anyone who's new here, and doesn't know, Dr. Shai, you've done your PhD in quantum cryptography from Hebrew University. And your thesis was on ways to update or extend existing cryptographic systems, right? i.e. Bitcoin and other crypto.
This title is a bit of a fairy tale. I amalgamated two disparate projects, and I needed to find a title that will cover them both. So I had to go with something really, really general. But I'd say my thesis has two works comprising it. One of them is not too relevant, and the other one is about post-quantum migration of blockchains, and specifically how to help laggards, people who didn't have the opportunity to prepare before Q days.
Yeah, cool. All right, that out the way with introduction and set the rules. Let's start with some context, right? Quantum concerns, let's put it, right? These concerns are back in the news after Vitalik's post early in the year, right? Vitalik posted in February, and he was urging the Ethereum community to move to quantum resistant signature within 4 years, right? So my first question to you, right? Vitalik warned Ethereum community that quantum computers could crack elliptic curve before the 2028 US presidential election. What do you think of that?
I think this is a bit. Don't I get the timer?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for reminding. Yes, it's going.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it is a bit overreaching, but I understand why Vitalik would want to be on the safe side, because it's better to be too prepared than not prepared enough. We don't really know when Q day is going to hit. We don't really know how advanced are anyone who is working on it. You could have, I don't know, the Chinese government being much more advanced than you think. I don't think they are, but you can't 100% discount this possibility. And since we are talking about large economies and huge sums of money, then you want to be prepared as possible. And if fiat banks, which are supposed to be like the more ossified and the less responsive, if they can do it, then Ethereum can do it. It will be much harder for reasons I guess we'll talk about, but there is nothing wrong about being safe. And the things that happened after Vitalik's post, the new progress, the configurable neutral atoms and all of that, it really shortened the deadline even more, since compressed the timeline since Vitalik's post.
Right. So it's more preemptively he's pushing everyone to get on this board soon as possible.
And this is going to be easier if I can actually see the timer.
Yeah, I don't know how to put it, actually. I should have thought about it. That would have been lovely to have somewhere here I'll put it up, actually, every time I'll ask you a question. So it's 1:34, essentially, if you want to add anything else.
Okay.
No? All right. So I'll just stop it. Let's go.
No, I finished this answer. We are speedrunning.
We're speedrunning. Perfect.
I'm already in the next level. Keep up.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm the slow one here now today. Perfect. Okay. So let's go through some of the user searches now, right? The people, what they're looking for or looking to know from this topic, right? So let me ask you this thing. What is the purpose? Let's start from the top. What is the purpose of cryptography in public blockchains like Bitcoin, Kaspa, or Ethereum? What is the purpose of cryptography?
Cryptography is used for many things. Cryptography is a huge toolbox that is useful essentially everywhere you want to make something easy for some people and hard for others. So I think the most ubiquitous use of cryptography, of a cryptographic scheme that is known primitive, is with signatures. And the purpose of signatures is essentially to have a digital identity, to be able to prove that this UTXO is yours, that you made it. This is the most known use of cryptography, but another really important one is the use of so-called random oracles, the SHA-256 and other hashes. We use them because they emulate with great success this property that if you change the input even by a single bit, then the output becomes completely random, and then you could use small amounts of randomness to generate this, to create this fair competition between miners, which is another really cool use of cryptography. And there are many more, because I think it works the other way around. People go over cool cryptographic schemes and cryptographic applications and find ways to integrate them with blockchains. But I think for now, the two most ubiquitous are the using hashing and using hashes and as random oracles, and using digital signatures as cryptographically safe internet identities.
That's beautiful. 141. Well done. Public blockchain wouldn't be blockchain without cryptography, right? I think that's easy way to put it, right? But yeah, uses across everywhere, right? So let me extend this question a bit, right? Based on what people are asking for. So What are the algorithms that are used in public blockchain? These cryptographic algorithms that are used across all of the blockchains.
I think it's the same question and the same answer. The two most ubiquitously used types of primitives are random oracles and signature schemes. You have all sorts of other stuff that is used in several Merkle trees, I guess. So Merkle tree, you can think about it as another tool or as a more complicated version of hashing that does some more cool stuff. But I think there are tons of other stuff that it used here, is used there, but essentially these are the two big ones. Yeah, I forgot that in crypto when people say algo, they specifically mean the hashing used for proof of work. So there is SHA-256, there is heavy hash and heavy hash, there is Blake 2, Blake 3, the entire Blake family, the entire SHA family, the entire Ketchuk family. There are so many of them.
Right.
Let's make it a bit more organized. There are two things. There is what's called a scheme and what's called a primitive. A primitive is just a syntactic thing. It's a list of procedures that provides you some guarantee. A scheme is a particular implementation. So a primitive would be say a random oracle or a collision resistant function, and the implementation, the scheme you used could be SHA-256, Blake, etc., and each one of them has different properties. And similarly, the primitive is a signature scheme, and a signature scheme could be ECDSA or EC Schnorr or post-quantum signatures like Falcon and the rest. So I think this is how you avoid confusing terminology. Use primitive to describe a functionality and scheme to describe an implementation.
Right. So if you even have to simplify it, Shai, like how do you even simplify it to someone who's brand new to it? They've never, like where are these algorithms getting used on the public blockchains? If there is a better answer for this.
So you use the signatures whenever you want to prove that that a UTXO belongs to you. That you essentially, it's a proof. You can think about a digital signature as a almost zero knowledge proof that you know the secret key. And it's not completely zero knowledge because you learn a bit of stuff, but you don't learn anything that really helps you to crack the key classically or if the scheme is secure. And you can think about hashes. They're used for many stuff, but the way they are used for proof of work, you can think about them as die tosses. But you could provide a proof that you managed to toss the die on this value in the sense of what you put into the hash function. It's like controlled randomness. It seems random when you try to find a value, but after you found a value, you can deterministically show again how you received this value. So it's like this cube, but you control completely the initial conditions, and you're looking for conditions that you can throw the cube such that it will land on a 1, even though it has 10 billion sides. This is how we use hashes. And other uses is for commitments, because it's really hard to find a hash of a given string. I can hash the string and give you the hash, and you can hash a string and give me the hash, and only then we open the strings. So we can use this to, for example, do fair coin flips over the phone where no one can cheat. I just choose 0 or 1 and hash it, you choose 1 or 0 and hash it, and after that we both open the hashes and we say, if both of them are the same, then it heads, otherwise it's tails, and none of us can know what the other did until after they committed to their own choice. So this is a really simple example of how hashes are used as commitments, and you see it everywhere on the blockchain space.
Yeah, I think that was really well put. So thank you. So this one is very interesting. I didn't time your last one because I wanted to get a little bit more out of it, but I'm going to time you on this one. So can quantum computers steal my Bitcoin or other crypto? It's very commonly asked.
It depends on a few conditions, but you can't rule it out. Essentially, there are many attack vectors. Let's say that they definitely make it much easier. In some conditions, they can just outright steal your money. In other conditions, they can try to steal your money if you try to spend. But either way, it doesn't make things better. A lot of people think that just because your keys are hashed, then you're completely protected, and that's wrong. Other people say, okay, you can try to front run, but you only have 10 minutes. What a quantum computer can do in 10 minutes. But then I can say, okay, but what if I do an eclipse attack? What if you think your transaction is on the blockchain, but actually I'm eclipsing you now? Eclipse attacks are not simple, but before quantum computers, the consequences of a front-running attack was that you're getting censored, or maybe that you can be a victim of a double spend intentionally by the owner of the money. And with quantum computers, the repercussions of eclipse attacks is that your money gets stolen. So it creates new attack vectors and it reduces security. Even if you are behind a hash, it's not enough. We need more repercussions.
So what is eclipse attack while we at it?
An eclipse attack is say that you have a wallet and I'm paying you. I don't know, I pay you 10 bitcoins for a luxury car.
Sure.
And then you look at the network and you see that the transaction was contained and a lot of other transactions were contained too, and everything looks great. And then I take your car and walk away. And then once I walk away, your internet connection dies, and then you realize that you weren't really connected to your router, but to a router I created with the same name that I used to phish you. And all of the data that you've seen that allegedly proves that the payment transferred, it was all fake. And none of this interaction actually happened on the internet. It was all a local illusion. Now, it's not an easy attack, but it's a possible.
Right. Okay. All right. So just going back to the question, right? Can quantum computers steal my Bitcoin/crypto, whatever? But that's not today, right? The answer you gave is for future when quantum computers are ready.
Exactly. Right now, we don't have any machines that are strong enough to prove that they are quantum. Proving that a machine is quantum is a challenge on its own. It's called quantum supremacy or proof of quantumness. And even finding ways to do that that will convince everyone is already a challenge. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be prepared. As I said, it is a timeline, and the indications show that things happen faster than people expected rather than slower. So you really don't want to discount this entire thing.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So next one, will quantum computers break Bitcoin or Ethereum or Kaspa?
So it really depends on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
They definitely compromise all of the above. As I said, in Bitcoin, there are a lot of coins that are exposed right now for the stealing. And even if you are completely safe, it would undermine the entire, it might undermine the entire Bitcoin economy. I mean, a lot of people might be averse to the knowledge that 5 million Bitcoins or whatever it is were stolen by an unknown but very strong entity. It's not a positive development for the economy.
No, overall.
So threats are always there. And there are threats for people who reused keys, and there are other sorts of threats. So there is a Kaspa specific example with Muhash. Muhash was invented in the early 90s, I think, or even late 80s. I don't really remember. But the people behind it, the security relies on something called discrete logarithms, which is the same thing that breaks under quantum computers. And they wrote an entire section about what happens if you break D-log and why do they think that it's still safe. And it's actually been debunked since, because people found new interesting techniques. So the thing is that it reduces breaking Muhash, and breaking Muhash is terrible. If someone can break Muhash, they can very cheaply rewrite Kaspa's entire history. They only need a 3-day double spend attack. It's scary. But it's not really feasible, even with a quantum computer right now, because there is a rather big classical problem you need to solve, even if you can use the quantum computer. The thing is that the quantum computer downgrades the security from a cryptographic assumption to an assumption which is called like an NP assumption, which is hard but not quite as hard and not considered hard enough for cryptography. So even though I can't attack it today with regular hardware, it's solving the kind of problems that you need in order to break Muhash, given that you have a quantum computer that computes all the D-logs, is not something which is easy, but it's not outside of reach either. And similar algorithms are showing improvements, unlike cryptographic hardness assumptions, where the ability of classical computers to solve this problem haven't improved in decades, like factoring numbers or D-log. But in this problem, it's called the randomized subset sum problem, never mind. Randomized modular subset prime, but never mind that. The thing is that there has been steady improvement in the algorithmics. So right now it's still exponential or super polynomial, I don't remember, but you see that it isn't as robust as a cryptographic assumption. And since this thing doesn't just break one wallet, it would break the entire blockchain, I think this is a reason for concern, especially because I don't see any clear path to retroactively upgrading.
I see.
This thing, not that it doesn't exist, but I haven't thought about it a lot. But this is just one example of more unexpected side effects. And I was able to find this side effect just because I know Kaspa very, very well. So how many other less or more crucial side effects hide in other blockchains that I haven't reviewed to this extent and nobody has? I can't really tell you. That's part of what's scary. There isn't a really good survey of all of the weak points in all of the popular blockchains.
Well, I wanted to ask you specifically, we talked about Kaspa. What about Bitcoin? Like, I don't know if you looked at it, but what do you think of Bitcoin as such?
In what sense? I have a lot of thoughts about Bitcoin.
Yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. But specifically, the same, I guess, question specifically to Bitcoin, right? But will quantum computers break Bitcoin, right? So some of people writing blogs, right, they're saying, no, it will not break it, but it could break the security of many individual wallets, right? And then obviously the paper by Justin Drake, which is he co-authored on the Google paper recently, right? So I guess I wanted to get your views on what do you think specifically to Bitcoin? You talked about Kaspa, but on the Bitcoin front.
Okay, so it's not entirely correct that quantum computers don't have any consequence for the Bitcoin protocol itself.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that they break it from a much tougher angle. Like I said, I showed you an example of quantum attack that only uses reversing D-logs and this Shor algorithm stuff, and that can break the Kaspa protocol itself, not just break into wallets. Now, in Bitcoin, there are also a lot of risks, actually in all proof-of-work coins, but the thing is that in order for these risks to be relevant, you need significant quantum mining. You need enough quantum miners on the network. Now, quantum miners don't just compete against a particular problem, they compete against the entire hash rate of the network. Now, Bitcoin happens to have two natural safeguards against the quantum attacks that we know of that can compromise, the quantum mining attacks that we know of. So let me tell you something that might sound a bit scary. If I have a quantum computer and I use it to mine, even if it's very small compared to the rest of the network, if the rest of the network is classical, then I can double spend, no matter how small my fraction is. If you give me enough time, I can create a heavier chain. Now, what is enough time? This attack works through what's called a difficulty manipulation. Thing is that Grover has this quadratic speedup, which means that if I make the difficulty 100 times larger, but I have a quantum computer, I actually only need to work 10 times harder to create a block which is 100 times heavier. So if I take the chain, fork from the chain and deliberately increase the difficulty more and more and more and more and more, then I would be able to create weight faster than the original network and use it to double spend. Now the thing is that in Bitcoin, first, there are low block rates, and so it will take a lot of time, but other than that, you have the difficulty of Bitcoin, the difficulty epoch takes 2 weeks. There are no changes to the difficulty for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And across epochs, you can only make the difficulty up to 4 times higher. You can't make it 100 times higher. So because of these two things, I think Satat, he's the guy who came up with this attack. And I think he computed that if you have like 10%, which is a lot, on Bitcoin, then it would take you tens of thousands of years. So because of these natural safeguards. But now we need to notice something. One, what happens if someone ever tries to update Bitcoin's DAA? They must be extremely aware of these quantum consequences. And the second, what happens in other coins where the global hash rate is not as high as Bitcoin's and where difficulty is much more responsive? And again, I bring as Kaspa as an example.
Kaspa, yeah, exactly.
Kaspa, it's only because I know Kaspa very well. This is actually a concern for all blockchains. But it's interesting to see that in this respect, having a high blockchain and a very responsive difficulty adjustment is to the detriment of the security.
Right.
Which is a motive we see a lot with quantum. That quantum kind of flips stuff and makes advantages into disadvantages. And in Kaspa specifically, I calculated, though this calculation is outdated because it doesn't take a BIP5, I think it is, the sampled windows into account. So you can make it 10 times, you need to make it 10 times or 100 times more, or I don't know, but I computed that a very naive attacker with 1% of the hash power can double spend on Kaspa within minutes.
That's crazy.
So it's not a huge concern, and it's not something that's hard to fix. You just need to limit how much the difficulty can change from one block to the other, maybe make a bit longer epochs. It's gonna have some cost, but it's not something that's difficult to correct.
Shai, you've proposed this.
It's just an example. And again, I just want to stress that.
Yeah, please.
Before we move on, I just want to stress that the only reason I keep bringing Kaspa as examples is just because it's the protocol I know best.
Yeah.
I'm sure that if we dive into any proof of work based protocol, especially the one that the more they deviate from the standard blockchain-like structure, then we will find similar vulnerabilities there too.
Yeah, no, of course, makes sense, right? Of course, you spend chunk of your life on Kaspa, so you would obviously know Kaspa well. And I think again, it's sort of, I think I'm combining two things: your knowledge of Kaspa, but also your knowledge and studies on cryptography, and perhaps how much time you spend on that industry. So that's, I think those two come together. I think that brings all the knowledge that you have, right? I guess just subsequent to this, right? So okay, I think I can see different angles here, but let me just, I guess, carry on and ask you another subsequent question, which is, when will quantum computers be powerful enough to hack crypto, right? And again, the user is generically saying crypto, not Kaspa, not Bitcoin, not Ethereum, crypto. Is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? What do you think?
Well, that's anybody's guess. But if I can stand on the shoulder of giants, in 2024, there was a survey. A few people surveyed an array of world-class experts on quantum computation, and more than 50% said there is more than a 50% chance of a cryptographically relevant quantum computer to appear by 2035.
2035.
Now, that was in 2024. Ever since then, we had unexpected developments, especially all of the really recent stuff with Atomic, which we need to see how it converges, but it looks very, very promising, actually. And so I think a lot of those who said by 2035 will agree that the timeline is compressed since. So maybe they'll say 50% for 2030 or 2032, I don't know. But these are like the scales. But again, it's just a matter of confidence. Nobody is guaranteeing anything.
Yeah. And I think it's similar to what Justin Drake said. I think he said 10% chance of a successful private key recovery from exposed public key by 2032. So that's similar to your numbers here. Yeah. And there's a lot of mention on the paper about the qubits. Like, I think the numbers have sort of come down, right? I think initially the qubits were higher, but now they're talking about 500,000 qubits.
No, they're talking about 10,000 qubits.
10,000. 10,000.
Physical qubits. Now, when we are talking about qubits, we have to be very careful. A lot of people enjoy the sport of counting qubits, but qubit count is not all of it. The picture is a lot more complicated. So one thing you need to know is to distinguish between physical and logical qubits. Essentially, physical qubits are the actual pieces of hardware, and they are noisy, and you use this technique called fault tolerance to create. You use redundancy in a clever way to create to simulate fewer perfect qubits from a lot of noisy qubits. This is called fault tolerance, and once you do it, you can kind of abstract away all the noise and say, okay, on this logical layer, I'm going to run my algorithm. So when they say you need 1,000 logical qubits to run Shor algorithm, they use this term to tell you we don't care how many physical qubits are underneath and how the fault tolerance works. So all the discussion on the logical qubits is above that. Now, this new development, they invented a new type of qubit. It's called reconfigurable neutral atom, reconfigurable qubit. There's a lot of names, at least two. For mathematicians to say if there's two, there's infinity. There is either 0, 1, or infinity.
Right.
So these kinds of qubits really reduce the number of physical qubits you need to create a logical qubit drastically. However, they are a more sophisticated type of qubit. It's harder to construct, harder to keep coherent, and it operates more slowly. So you need to take this into consideration. The thing is that even after you take all of this into consideration, this is still a huge breakthrough. But don't just think that because they reduce the number of qubits from 1 million to 10,000, then it's going to be 100 times easier or 100 times faster or 100 times cheaper. It's not. But it is still possibly, plausibly, even probably a very, very important breakthrough. And even if it makes it 10 times easier by requiring 100 times less qubits, but each qubit is 10 times more complicated. Of course, all of their statements are very vague by design. Then it is a huge breakthrough. But just looking at qubit counts and saying, oh, they now need 100 times less qubits than before, it's the wrong way.
Right. Okay. I think. Correct me again. You said 10,000 physical qubits. I think Justin Drake mentioned 500,000. Well, I keep referring him, but I think the paper itself mentions 500,000 physical qubits. But I think the number you mentioned.
Yes. So it's just.
Yeah.
It's two different types of qubits. There were two papers that came out, I think, even in the same day.
Right.
One of them was about optimizing the Shor's algorithm for the previous type of qubits, what we call the trapped ions. And when he talked about 500,000 qubits, he talked about physical noisy qubits. Yeah. And trapped ion qubits are popular because they are much easier to handle than other types of qubits, but they have also disadvantages which make fault tolerant much less efficient than it could be. I don't want to get into the math here, but the point, the really, really quick explanation is that the entire point of reconfigurable qubits is that you can move them around physically so that you can act on two qubits even if they are far away. Just it allows you to ignore the geometry of the problem, and it makes fault tolerant that much so easier. And this is the difference. Now, in terms of noisy qubits, ion trapped qubits, we started with around 100 million physical qubits, and then it was gradually reduced all the way down. They shaved all of the overhead without reducing the noise to below 1 million, which is amazing. And the 10,000 qubits in the Or atomic paper, which has some very impressive people signed on it, including John Preskill, which is a legend. Like, I mean, read a little about the guy. He used to make personal bets with Stephen Hawking about black hole radiation. It's this kind of tier of scientist. I mean,
That's
he's
amazing.
a top scientist. People who don't know who John Preskill is should really pick up a book, because he's a really interesting guy. And in this paper, they introduced this new type of qubit and how it could be used. So these things are not contradictory.
I see.
It's just we broke records on the ion trapped front, and in the same day also introduced a brand new approach.
I see. I thought it was just one paper, but I think you're mentioning that the two different things came out one day. Yeah, same day, similar day. Right. Okay. Right. I haven't read the other one, so I need to spend time perhaps myself reading the other paper. I think based on our chat last time, I was focused on physical qubits, which is, I think, what I looked at. So let me carry on with my set of questions, right? So let me ask you this thing. What exactly quantum computers are going to break in crypto? Just signature, mining, or everything?
So the question you need to ask yourself is not about the type of primitive. It's about the scheme. Again, so there are signature schemes that will be broken, and there are signature schemes that won't be broken. So if you want to understand which, you need to look at the scheme and understand what its hardness assumption is and what happens if they fail. So if you go, I don't know, let's go for example to RSA, the first ever signature and public encryption scheme, and you see that if you can factorize numbers, then you can break it completely and utterly. So it's completely quantum compromised. You can go to, to the crystals dilithium signature scheme, and it's the same primitive, as in it provides you the same functions and the same guarantees, and from a user API side, you can't really tell the difference between them. But on the implementation, it works entirely differently, and it relies on entirely different quantum hardness assumptions that we believe are hard even for quantum computers. So you have the same primitive signature scheme, but with signatures, right? Signature schemes, digital signatures, and you have two schemes. One is broken, one isn't. So the question isn't about functionalities, but about implementations. And anything that relies too heavily on elliptic curves is going to break immediately. And some stuff will not break immediately, but will become much more vulnerable, like Kaspa's Muhash. But essentially everywhere where the inability to factorize numbers to primes or to compute a D-log is what's standing in your way will become wide open.
Yeah, so almost all parts of crypto, from signatures, mining, and everything else, it can be broken by quantum computers when they're ready.
So there are a few implementations of primitives that are naturally quantum proof, and so in practice we've used quantum proof stuff since before we even thought about the quantum threat, and this is most hash functions. There are a few examples of hash functions that are quantum compromised. Again, Muhash comes to mind because it hashes to an elliptic curve group. So, but if you look at other hashes, like all of the hashes I mentioned before, Shaq, Ketchak, Blake, etc., all of these families, then they are not believed to be quantum vulnerable. There is some speed up, but it doesn't mean you can feasibly find a pre-image or feasibly find a collision. So whenever you need a hash, and the only security you need from a hash is collision resistant or pre-image resistance, which is how they are typically used. I mean, proof of work, we're so used to it, but it's the outlier here. It's not how hashes are typically used. Then you'd be fine. And for example, all symmetric encryptions that we use, like AES, DES, I'm not sure about DES because it's kind of weak either way, but AES, because it's hash-based, then it's also quantum proof out of the box, but it is symmetric encryption, which makes it less useful.
Okay. All right. I think we're within the time frame of 1.5 minutes, so that's great. That's great. I'm not showing you every time because I think you're doing well. So let me ask you next one, right? And that's one I think it's gonna get is even better now because these questions are really good. Is my wallet safe if I haven't spent my coins yet? And I think the user specifically mentioning, I guess, proof of work points, but could be applied to anything.
So what do you mean safe? Is your wallet safe? If you haven't spent
Come
your
on, Shai,
coins,
you're
but you haven't
ChatGPT.
spent...
You're ChatGPT. Tell us, give us the answers.
Okay, you want a ChatGPT answer. Okay. Great question that hits the topic right on the nail.
I love it. I love it already.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So, if you have never used any of the money in this wallet, or you never received money to the same address more than once, and you kept all best practices, then you're safe, as long as you don't try to spend your money. So yeah, nobody will steal your money and use it, but neither will you. So if you want to call it safe, I think that a network that you can't use is not really safe. Even though nobody can steal your money, you can't use it either. So it's kind of safe. It's safe in the sense that if I wait it out and they come out with a solution, then I'll come out the other hand with my fortune still intact. Okay, so this is some sort of safety, but it's not like you don't have anything to worry about.
So yeah, because it's not used, it cannot be used. What's the point of even? It's sort of the wrong question that the person or people asking, right? What about the older?
Yeah, so it's like it's a silly question. Yeah, so yeah, of course. I also have a car. My car is perfectly safe. It will never be in an accident as long as you never drive it.
Right. Yes, that's the same. That's a very good analogy. I like it. What about the old addresses now? Are the old addresses safe from quantum attack?
What do you mean old addresses? If you mean addresses that didn't use hashing, like P2PK addresses, they're really, really old addresses, they're huge stashes, then no, they're completely vulnerable.
Completely vulnerable, right. So next one, should I move my crypto to a new quantum safe wallet now?
So what are your options exactly? If you move it to a BIP 360 address, then you won't be able to use it until they implement stuff. If you want to transfer it to this new cool Starcore thing, allows you to create, to start operating quantum safely today. Great. So you can do that, but keep in mind that the computational cost of only generating each transaction is in the hundreds of dollars, and that's if you already have the best GPUs in the world lying around in your home, GPUs that cost $200,000, and that's before you take into account that each and every transaction is like 500 times larger than a standard Bitcoin transaction, so it would cost you, a few hundred times more in fees. So if you're fine with all of that, then yeah, go ahead and do that. But I think that at this point there is no good recourse for quantum proofing your money, which is one of the reasons why I'm so concerned with procrastinators, because procrastinators don't have to be individual people. It might be that the entire community procrastinated, and now QD arrived without anyone having any recourse, which is why a lot of people think that it's time to introduce at least one signature scheme exactly for people who want to be on the safe side to have these options. So people are working to push this through. And I think once it's available, it would be a good idea, at least for any long-term holdings. I mean, keep your pocket money in the cheap pre-quantum. And I promise you that if you only keep like hundreds of bucks there, then the quantum adversary would have a bigger fish to fry.
There's bigger fish to fry. So yeah, I think the answer is no. There's no fully mature, widely adopted quantum safe wallets, right? Specifically Bitcoin, but everywhere else, right? We're working on it.
There are wallets that present themselves as quantum secure on the hardware level, which is, I think, a bit of marketing hype. They do offer some stuff. I don't think it's really meaningful. If it makes you feel better, go ahead and get one. But it only secures your wallet itself from quantum attackers. It doesn't secure the Bitcoin protocol. If at the end of the day you use an ECDSA signature, it doesn't matter which wallet produced it.
Yeah. So I think I've already kind of asked you, will quantum computers kill crypto entirely? Like, will they kill crypto entirely? What is your one-word answer?
When you mean cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency, like entirely.
So here is the thing, they might, because essentially what will make or break cryptocurrency is not the actual quantum attacks and not the actual breaks, but the perception. And most people, I mean, if you take your head out of the crypto Twitter for a moment and talk about it with people from the big world, then most people are scared of Bitcoin because they don't understand it and they can't even realize how it could be secure in principle. And now that you pile on more problems and more complexity, this might be the slow death of crypto. So people imagine this waking up one day into a catastrophic calamity, someone stole the Satoshi stash, the entire crypto industry is going down. No. I think the real problem is that it piles on another aversity to adoption. So it's not going to make anything easier.
No, and it's psychological, right? As you mentioned, right? And I was going to say, even someone asking this question or a bunch of people looking for this on Google and other places, right, tells you that people are already thinking about this, right? Will it kill the entire industry? And that's pretty bizarre, but it's like you need to understand the psychology behind it. That's why it's timely to have this discussion to tell people there are obvious risks, but also there are obvious easy solutions.
There are obvious, easy, very partial solutions. It's not a solution, it's more like there are measures that you can use to help people prepare, even though there aren't full solutions yet.
Right. So let's move on to the solution part. I think that's what people are now looking for, which is it impossible to patch Bitcoin against quantum computing?
So again, what do you mean by patch? You can add a new post-quantum signature scheme tomorrow if you want. It's not that difficult. The most difficult part is agreeing on exactly what scheme to implement and why. And as I like saying in each and every interview, good luck rallying a community that has been in 100-year wars over OpConCat to agree on anything, especially something like that. But even if you do introduce post-quantum signatures, does this solve the problem? Transactions now are much more expensive. There are a lot of people who now can't even afford to migrate their money. There will be rallying to migrate the money, which might congest the networks for literal years. And below that, you don't know if the signature scheme you implemented is the correct one, if a vulnerability is going to pop up at some point. And even if you did all that and you gave recourse to all that, then what are you going to do with quantum loot, with stuff that's money on the floor for quantum adversaries, with people who lost their secret key and all this kind of stuff. And people can go and say, well, everyone is responsible for their own money. But again, then you get this quantum entity which in a single swoop takes all of this money and becomes disproportionately affluent. And what, you're going to fork out their wallets? Again, if you couldn't get people to agree on a signature scheme, good luck on agreeing on a policy to burn or freeze wallets. I mean, so the migration is really the really challenging part here, not introducing the post-quantum signatures. And there are several works that I think combine together very well to provide. I don't know if it's an exhaustive solution, but it is comprehensive and at the very least, it answers most of the concerns.
Yeah. So, carrying that thought, what happens to Satoshi's wallet? I think you brought it up just before, right? What happens to that in case of a hard fork, right? In case that needs to be done, what would happen to his wallet, which is just sitting lying there for a very long time, 18 years, right? 17, 18 years.
So this is the thing about hard fork. If you are hard forking, then you can do whatever you want. You can decide that this wallet stay there for posterity, but are not allowed to be spent, and the attempt to spend them is invalid, which is burning them. Or you can decide that the UTXO are erased and that's it, so the economy shrinks, or you decide that you reduce did you burn or delete all of these UTXOs, but then you keep the total circulation the same by re-emitting them into emissions. You can use them to fund a quantum canary. You can do a lot of stuff.
So these are
But
technical
once you do a hard
solutions,
fork,
right?
you can essentially do anything.
But these are technical solutions we are thinking, right? What about the political one? Because I think political one will be the even harder, right? Technical, I think.
I think the decision between burning or re-emitting or freezing or doing nothing is a very political decision.
Yeah,
Technically,
true.
all of these are easy to implement. So this is why I think it's so difficult to come to a decision, because it's not because of the technical difficulties, because it's a highly contentious topic. On one hand, do you put the principles above the soundness of the economy? But on the other hand, if a few people can decide to erase a huge wallet, then how is this decentralized? There is a lot of tension here that it's really hard to resolve between ideals and reality, which is essentially what all radical social movements run into at one point or another. So I really can't predict how the dust is going to settle, but I'm really enjoying the show.
Yeah, and along with Satoshis, there are around 5 to 6 million other coin holders or wallets that are sitting there, right? That
I don't remember the numbers, but you have a lot of quantum loot on the network in various forms, either old wallets which are not hashed or reused addresses. So you have a lot of UTXOs whose unhashed public keys are already available on the blockchain, because the person received a lot of UTXOs into the same address and then spent one of them. And then anyone knows the keys, and if they can use their quantum computer to get the secret key, they can spend all of the rest. So these are hashed but still quantum compromised. So it's not that simple.
and the ones you mentioned also, which were the P2PK, right, addresses, there are a lot of those ones, right?
They are completely vulnerable. Fortunately, there is very few of them. Unfortunately, each one of them has a huge sum to it. So, it's a game of odds.
It is a game of odds. All right, so this one is a good one, right? So if we talk a lot within the, I guess, crypto ecosystem about the quantum threat, right? But these same threats apply to banks, to credit cards, to ATM, to e-commerce website. Do they apply the same way to those industries or not?
No, they do not. And this is one point that is something I really don't like to hear this argument. People have to understand. You love decentralization. I get it. You love it when things are decentralized and you think it's a good way for humanity to go. I dig you. I don't know if I 100% understand, but I completely understand why you would feel this way. But this doesn't mean that decentralization is always an advantage in its situation. When is decentralization very, very difficult? For example, when you have to upgrade your infrastructure. I mean, people say banks would be more vulnerable. The truth of the matter is that it's possible and even highly likely that when you log into your bank account from your browser, this connection is already carried over post-quantum cryptography. Why? Because it was already implemented and the bank doesn't need to ask you what kind of cryptography to use, because you never hold keys and you never use it directly. You only use cryptography for communication with the bank, which is fresh cryptography each time, and then you trust the bank to manage everything. So you might not like the trust part, but it does mean that the bank could update the infrastructure on its own initiative without having to rally all of the bank customers. In Bitcoins, you can't do that. You need to coordinate everyone. You need to rally everyone. You need to give some recourse to people you aren't able to rally, or at least have some damage control for the fact that money is going to be stolen. And this makes everything so much more complicated. So no, I'd say this is one thing I'm going to say with the utmost certainty. Banks, fiat, all of the centralized infrastructure they are at much less risk, and they are at a much better position to shield themselves from these risks. So trying to say, oh, fiat is worse at everything is not going to save you this time.
No. They still have the same threat, but I think they're just in a better position because they're centralized. That's perhaps a better way to put it.
But it's not even the same threat, because you can't attack users directly. I mean, okay, I know that you use this and that bank. You don't have a wallet, a personal wallet that I can attack. Okay, I can try to attack you directly with phishing attacks or any sort of social engineering. You can't do anything about this. But when it comes to cryptography, I can't get your money by hacking you. I have to hack the bank. So it's a completely different situation.
So it's not one-to-one, it's I guess it is one-to-one, but it's one-to business entity that's centralized, that have all the resources and can perhaps protect themselves better than a user can.
Yeah, and you also have a better security net. Like if someone hacks the bank and steals your money, then your bank will give you the money back. They will carry the costs. And if it's huge costs, and the bank has insurance and so on and so forth. Now, you may not like this monetary system, but it is a fact that it gives users a safety net that crypto, I don't know if it cannot, but it's very hard. Like if there is a bug in Bitcoin and you lost $1 million by no fault of your own, you're not going to get a cent back. That's the way it is. And that's what makes a lot of the stuff harder.
Yeah, that's the downside of, I guess, decentralization that you're highlighting here. It's important to discuss these topics as well, because I think we try to ignore these things and thinking that it's just decentralized is better in every way possible. I think there are some downsides. So it's always good to discuss. So then the next question is, how do you make crypto quantum resistance? Shai, come on, tell us.
Okay, so actually, I did another interview a few days back, which was completely devoted just to this question. And I still don't think I went through all of the points I wanted to. But there are a few very interesting proposal lines on the table, and you don't have to pick and choose. I think they complement each other very nicely. I think, first of all, this Starkware Q quantum spending thing is really cool, because it's the only solution that gives you recourse even today. I mean, if you are Michael Saylor and it actually makes sense financially, you can transfer all your Bitcoins to this kind of address. And unless, they implement something like BIP 110 very poorly, and then you will lose all your money, which is also a problem. But never mind, that's a can of worms I won't open here. But this gives immediate recourse for people which have enough resources. BIP 360 is paving the ground for introducing new signature schemes in a soft fork. Jameson Lopes' newest BIP, when I last read it, it was BIP TBD, but now I think it's BIP 361. So it's trying to come up with ways to do the migration process. I think it's a bit naive. I think there is important work that it doesn't take into account. But it's a work in progress, so I hope they'll get there. And the other thing is a bit more niche, but I have a personal stake in it. A Bitcoin developer, a non-Bitcoin engineer called Rosebeef, I think he's one of the people who invented the Lightning protocol and network. So they're actually working to implement a version of the protocol that Or Satata and myself put together in my PhD thesis. And this is a protocol. So if I have to map it out, the Starkware thing can help people even today. This is its advantage. The BIP 360 thing, its advantage that it's a soft fork, but it allows to introduce new signatures which are post-quantum in a rather straightforward way. And the last one, which I call Lifted Foxcoin or LFC, and I don't think it has an official name, this is the solution that it does require a fork, and it's not as efficient as or as simple as using post-quantum signature, but it has two major advantages. One is that it can help laggards. It's the only solution that you don't need to make any preparations in advance to actually use. And the second one is that it allows a more diverse mode of operation. You could use either slow and cheap or fast and expensive routes of payment, which I think is kind of cool. And I think all of these complement each other, because one is available today for people who are in a rush. One introduces signatures for people who are willing to wait, but are complacent at this point. And the other one is the only one who could help people who did not prepare. And technically, this solution, the lifted Foxcoin solution, can allow a reasonable way to operate securely without any post-quantum signatures at all. It has its meaningful drawbacks, but it is possible. Like, it could give recourse to laggards, even in a situation when the laggards are the entire community who never implemented any other solution.
I mean, all these questions perhaps require, entire sessions on them, but I think we were speed running today, so that's great. So let me ask you the last wrap-up question for the session. A bunch of users ask, why hasn't it already been fixed, right? We know the solution. Why hasn't this been fixed already? If we know how to fix it, why has not been fixed? I think you went over it, but yeah, you can perhaps explain again.
Yeah, well, there is this tension. On one hand, you don't want to take your time too much, but on the other hand, you don't want to rush things too much, especially in a decentralized protocol where you're probably only going to get one chance. So imagine that people rush into implementing a post-quantum signature scheme, and everyone rallies and rushes to migrate their money to the post-quantum new signature scheme, and then someone finds a vulnerability. After all of that, you need to change the signature scheme again. You think Bitcoin could survive it? I am not so sure. So you really want to be completely certain that you can never be completely certain. I'm taking this back. The cryptographer in me kind of convulsed at that. But you need to have a high degree of confidence that you're not going to have any nasty surprises, especially not in a decentralized system where migrating is that much more difficult. You want to avoid unnecessary additional migrations just because you didn't do a perfect job the first time. So it's completely reasonable why people take their time. And there are also technical issues. Post-quantum signatures are very large. They are hard to compute. They are going to, computationally, they are going to make a lot of hardware wallets, currently existing hardware wallets, they are going to render them obsolete. It's not like you can take your Ledger wallet and just implement the software for computing a Falcon signature on it. It's not strong enough. It's much too weak. The hardware required for hardware wallets is going to cost more. Anyone with a traditional hardware wallet would have to migrate. They won't be safe anymore. So you really want to find the way to do it in the best possible way. And I think it's completely reasonable to take the time to map out the possibilities and even just to wait and see how existing proposed schemes stand up to scrutiny and cryptanalysis. So I'm glad that people didn't rush it. Like, in 2026, in 2025, people said Bitcoin should already implement these signatures. I said, guys, you're crazy. It's premature. So I think now we are starting to ripen towards this, but of course it's not my decision, but it seems more reasonable because there's been a lot of scrutiny and a lot of advancement in our understanding of what makes these schemes secure, what makes them insecure, and how to construct them efficiently. So I think we are starting to reach a point where the signatures themselves are mature enough so it would be reasonable to incorporate them. But even though I am not a quantum denier, I don't think it's overhyped. I think the community should come up with a solution and implement a solution, and yet I think it's very good that they're taking their time so far. I think it's a good approach. I don't see any reason not to wait up to 2027, 2028 if this means a better solution, which is more efficient and more with more evidence towards its security.
Yeah. Perfect. So let me ask you perhaps one last question. Have you been in touch with the Kaspa team, the developers, right? Have you proposed to them any of the solutions for Kaspa? Have you been in touch? Any proposals you've put together? Anything they've accepted or at least considered?
No, not really. Ever since I departed away from the Kaspa team and community, I don't do free work. They know my credentials. They know my background. If they want to quantum proof Kaspa and they need help, they can approach me with an offer. It's as simple as that. It's business. It's work.